Hello and welcome to the Sunday Guardian show by Joyeeta Basu. I'm the editor of the Sunday Guardian newspaper, published from New Delhi. I had said in one of my earlier videos that while it is important for the United States to ensure that the Ukraine war does not impact its relations with India, we in India too need to do some soul searching about our relationship with Russia. Now, let me explore the topic by referring to the latest vote in the United Nations General Assembly against Russia's annexation of 4 regions in Ukraine. Now, we again abstained in the vote, even while issuing a strong statement without naming Russia. Now, this story has been repeating itself right from the time Vladimir Putin invaded Ukraine on 24th February 2022. We even abstained from condemning Russia's human rights violations. In fact, I find it extremely problematic that as the world's largest democracy, we are unwilling to side with the people of Ukraine, people who lost everything overnight, were turned into refugees, were killed and maimed, people whose whole lives were destroyed. Sending token aid does not matter if you ask me. Now, in fact, in pursuing our diplomatically correct policy, where we apparently do not condemn any country for human rights violation, we abstained from voting even against China at the Human Rights Council. China, which is our sworn enemy and is committing genocide of the Uyghur population. Now, what we are witnessing in Ukraine and in Xinjiang are humanitarian disasters and not some fake human rights charges hurled at India by groups propped up in the West by our enemies. Now, just because the West uses human rights as a political tool to serve its own goals, does not mean that we cannot take the moral high ground for once and spell out a wrong as a wrong. Now, certain things are beyond which side you support. Certain things are above and beyond politics. In fact, if you ask me, there is no justification for what Putin has done. Don't tell me that Russia was pushed to the corner because of NATO expansion and had no choice but to fight back militarily. Now, if every nation feeling cornered starts invading neighboring countries, that will be the end of the rules-based order. Now think of China doing something similar to India and let us see what our response is. Now make no mistake that India is crystal clear that the invasion violates the UN Charter. So why shouldn't that reflect in the way we vote? Now I know our diplomats will use every jargon, find different technicalities to explain why we are abstaining. Well, that's their job. But think of the optics. What is the world seeing? On the one hand, we are condemning the invasion in strong language, while on the other, we are not translating our condemnation into action by voting against the invasion. Now, this is sending confusing signals. Now, our diplomats may believe that the world will understand how nuanced our position is, how subtle. But the world doesn't understand. It instead takes our neutrality as support for Russia. And this is bound to impact our relations with the democratic world in particular. It is already impacting. Now the common question is, why is India standing with the warmonger? Now I know that a country's foreign policy is about taking care of one's own interests and that we cannot cut the cord with Russia, especially since it is willing to supply us with discounted oil. In fact, whatever the West might be saying, we should continue to buy oil from Russia if that keeps recession at bay in India and eases the lives of 1.3 billion of our people. That is good governance. But beyond that, what is standing with Russia giving us, except for souring our relations with a large part of the democratic order? The Russia of Vladimir Putin is not the Soviet Russia of the Cold War era, with which India had historical links. The bitter truth that Russia lovers in India need to face is that Putin's Russia is not muscular enough to pull off a quick victory over a tiny Ukraine. Russia's military prowess is coming under question. Bombing a country which does not have an air defense system, as Russia did recently, is neither an act of bravery nor a sign of Russia winning the war. It's a sign of desperation. The fact is, in spite of all the huffing and puffing, Putin will be able to do zero, when Sweden and Finland join the NATO because he cannot afford to take on the NATO. Worse, Putin's Russia is behaving like a rogue, threatening the use of nuclear weapons. If, God forbid, Putin uses tactical nuclear weapons in Ukraine, will India stand with that act of criminality? I know about the defense argument that 60% of our defense equipment are Russian in origin and that we cannot cut that cord. It's a valid argument, but it also raises a question. Is Russia using this as a leverage to make us back it in this horrible war? If yes, what sort of a friend is Russia? Now, I understand that weaning away our armed forces from Russian equipment will take time, but reducing our dependence is a must and has to be hastened by diversifying our purchases and by making at home. Also, the rate at which the war is continuing, it will anyway dry up the flow of weapons from Russia. India is already facing the problem of sourcing spare parts for its Russian equipment. Moreover, Putin's Russia is sanctions it and a global pariah. It will not be able to give India the critical technology ever again, which we'll need. Now, worse, by holding on to Russia's coattail, we are risking the drying up of critical technology from the West. And let's not forget the China factor. Russia is completely dependent on China, a dependence that will keep increasing post this war. China and Russia have something they call the no limits partnership. Now, notwithstanding the hiccups in China-Russia relationship, and there are hiccups, the fact is a fund-starved Russia was dependent on China even before the war started. In 2018, China alone accounted for over 15% of Russia's total trade. Chinese technology has flooded Russia. Manufacturing is coming under the control of the Chinese. Russia is dependent on China for 5G. The two countries have strong defense ties. Just as the Russians have sold us their S-400, they have sold S-400 to the Chinese too. Xi Jinping knew that Putin would invade Ukraine. And the current mobilization by Putin has Xi Jinping's backing. All this has been reported time and again. Now, what if Russia decides to be neutral in case of an India-China conflict? Talk to people in the military and you will know what Russia's response is on this matter. Now, will that neutrality affect our arms supply from Russia? Now, I'm not trying to absolve the West of blame in prolonging this war by supplying Ukraine with deadly weapons. I believe that the war must stop before it escalates into something bigger, and India must do its best to stop it. At the same time, if foreign policy is about taking care of one's own interests, it is time India took care of its own interests and started decoupling from Russia. With the course that Putin has adopted, the future is not with Russia. India has a future. Its policy needs to look at that future, for which that policy has to be both independent and, most importantly, smart. Thank you for watching. Until the next time.